Are you on Mount Stupid right now? There's a 90% chance the answer is yes, and you have absolutely no idea. In 1999, two psychologists at Cornell University discovered something that changed how we understand human confidence forever. They found that the least competent people in any field are also the most confident, and that the skills you need to do something well are exactly the same skills you need to recognize when you're doing it badly. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why it happens, and more importantly, whether it's happening to you right now. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University published a study that would become one of the most cited papers in the history of psychology. It started with a strange news story. A man named MacArthur Wheeler had robbed two banks in Pittsburgh in broad daylight without a mask, without a disguise. He walked straight up to the cameras. When police showed him the footage, he was genuinely confused. He had rubbed lemon juice on his face before the robbery, believing it would make him invisible to cameras, the same way lemon juice is used as invisible ink. Wheeler wasn't mentally ill. He was simply profoundly wrong and completely unaware of it. Dunning and Kruger asked, "Is this an isolated case, or is there something deeper going on?" Dunning and Kruger ran a series of experiments. They tested students on logical reasoning, grammar, and humor. After each test, they asked participants two questions. How well do you think you did, and how do you think your performance compares to other students? The results were striking. Students who scored in the bottom quarter, the worst performers, estimated that they had performed better than 62% of their peers. They didn't just overestimate themselves slightly. They overestimated massively, and the pattern held across every single test. The less competent someone was, the more confident they were. The best performers, meanwhile, slightly underestimated their own abilities, assuming others found the tasks just as easy as they did. Dunning and Kruger's findings gave us a mental model that is now known informally as the curve of knowledge. It works like this. When you know nothing about a subject, your confidence is appropriately low. But as soon as you learn just a little enough to feel like you understand the basics, your confidence shoots up dramatically. This is the peak of the curve. Some people call it Mount Stupid. You know just enough to feel like an expert, but not enough to know how much you don't know. Then, as you learn more, something uncomfortable happens. You start to realize how complex the subject actually is, how much you missed, how many exceptions there are to every rule you thought you understood. Your confidence crashes into what researchers call the valley of despair. And then, slowly, as genuine expertise develops, confidence rises again, this time grounded in real knowledge and real experience. The reason incompetent people can't recognize their own incompetence comes down to a cruel irony that Dunning himself described perfectly. The skills you need to produce a correct answer are exactly the same skills you need to recognize what a correct answer looks like. If you don't know enough about a subject to do it well, you also don't know enough to realize you're doing it badly. A bad chess player doesn't know enough chess to see their own mistakes. A bad writer doesn't have enough literary judgment to recognize weak prose. A bad doctor who hasn't kept up with research doesn't know enough to know what they're missing. The very incompetence that creates the problem also prevents its detection. It is a closed loop with no natural exit. You see the Dunning-Kruger effect everywhere once you know what to look for. The person who watched 3 YouTube videos about investing and now confidently manages their entire savings without professional advice. The new employee who has been at the job for 2 weeks and starts explaining to 10-year veterans how things should be done. The amateur cook who after one successful dinner party starts telling professional chefs what they're doing wrong. The person who took one psychology class and now diagnoses everyone around them with personality disorders. None of these people are stupid. They are normal humans experiencing a universal cognitive pattern. The problem is not their intelligence. It is the gap between what they know and what they think they know. But here is the part nobody talks about, and this might affect you more than what we just covered. The Dunning-Kruger effect has a mirror image. While incompetent people overestimate their abilities, highly competent people consistently underestimate theirs. Experts assume that what comes easily to them must come easily to everyone. They forget that their skill is the product of thousands of hours of practice that most people have never done. A brilliant mathematician assumes the proof is obvious. An experienced surgeon assumes the procedure is straightforward. A gifted writer assumes their clarity is just normal. This is called the false consensus effect, the expert's version of the Dunning-Kruger problem. And it has a name you might recognize: impostor syndrome. The feeling that you are not as good as others think you are, that you are faking it, that you will be found out. Research suggests that up to 70% of people experience impostor syndrome at some point in their lives. It is particularly common among high achievers, people who are objectively good at what they do but chronically doubt it. Studies at universities show that students who graduate at the top of their class are often more anxious about their abilities than students in the middle. CEOs of successful companies frequently report feeling like they don't deserve their position. Award-winning scientists describe constant fear of being exposed as frauds. The cruel symmetry of the Dunning-Kruger curve is this: the people most likely to be overconfident are the least qualified, and the people most likely to doubt themselves are often the most qualified. Confidence, it turns out, is not a reliable indicator of competence. So where do you sit on this curve right now? And I mean this as a genuine question, not a rhetorical one. Most people who hear about the Dunning-Kruger effect immediately think of someone else: the overconfident colleague, the know-it-all relative, the confident incompetent on social media. Very few people's first instinct is to wonder whether they themselves might be on Mount Stupid about something. But here is what the research tells us: everyone is on Mount Stupid about something. The question is not whether you have blind spots. You do. We all do. The question is whether you are curious enough to find them. Dunning himself said in an interview that the research made him more suspicious of his own certainty, not less confident in general, but more careful about the specific moments when he felt most sure. Dunning and Kruger's research also points toward a way out. The antidote to the effect is not intelligence, it is metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. There are 3 practices that research supports consistently. The first is seeking specific feedback, not general reassurance. Am I doing well? Is a useless question. What specifically am I getting wrong and how can I fix it? Is the question that moves you off the peak. The second is deliberate exposure to experts. Not to be intimidated, but to recalibrate. When you spend time around people who are genuinely excellent at something, your internal standard of what good looks like shifts dramatically. The third is the practice of steel-manning opposing views. Before dismissing an argument, try to make it as strong as possible. If you can't make a strong case for the other side, you probably don't understand the topic as well as you think. The valley of despair, which feels like failure, is actually the most important place on the entire curve. It is where real learning begins. It is where you stop performing confidence and start building competence. Every expert you admire has spent significant time in that valley. The discomfort of realizing how much you don't know is not a sign that you are bad at something. It is a sign that you have moved past the dangerous illusion of beginner confidence into the honest work of genuine understanding. David Dunning put it simply: the first step to knowledge is knowing what you don't know. And the willingness to sit with that uncertainty, rather than papering over it with false confidence, is what separates people who keep growing from people who stop. So the next time you feel absolutely certain about something, pause. Ask yourself, am I at the top of Mount Stupid, or have I actually done the work? And the next time you feel like a fraud despite genuine accomplishment, remember that this feeling is often a sign of real expertise, not its absence. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not a flaw in certain people. It is a feature of human cognition that all of us navigate all the time. The goal is not to eliminate it. It is to stay curious enough to notice it. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe. Every week we break down one psychology concept that changes how you see yourself and the people around you. What topic should we cover next? Drop it in the comments. See you in the next video.